The judge looked me straight in the eyes. Then he said something that shattered 22 years of my marriage. "Mrs. Bennett, according to these financial records, your husband has been paying child support every month for the last 18 years. The entire courtroom disappeared. I couldn't hear the lawyers. I couldn't hear the judge. I couldn't even hear my own heartbeat. There was only one thought repeating inside my head. No, that's impossible. My husband, Ethan Bennett, wasn't that man. He wasn't a cheater. He wasn't someone who could keep a secret for nearly 2 decades. At least, that's what I'd believed. Slowly, I turned toward him. Everyone else in the courtroom was already looking at Ethan. Waiting for him to laugh. Waiting for him to tell the judge they had mixed up the paperwork. Waiting for him to say, "You've got the wrong person." Instead, my husband lowered his head, closed his eyes, and whispered just 2 words. "I'm sorry." That was the moment my marriage ended. Not because I stopped loving him, but because I realized I had never truly known the man I'd married. Intradine. My name is Olivia Bennett. I'm 44 years old. For 22 years, I believed I had the kind of marriage people admired, the kind neighbors secretly envied. Every Sunday, Ethan made pancakes. Every Christmas Eve, he insisted on reading the same bedtime story to our daughter Emma, even after she became a teenager. He never forgot our anniversary. He never raised his voice. He never gave me a reason to question him. If someone had told me that my husband had been hiding another life, I would have laughed. Not because it sounded ridiculous, because I trusted him completely. Looking back now, I've learned something. The biggest betrayals don't begin with an affair. They begin with a single secret. One secret becomes another, then another, until the truth grows so heavy, it can no longer stay buried. The courtroom was where my marriage ended, but the story started 3 weeks earlier. 3 weeks earlier. 3 weeks earlier. 3 weeks before the courtroom, my life looked perfectly ordinary. Seattle was wrapped in its usual gray skies. Rain tapped softly against the kitchen windows. The coffee machine hummed in the background. Ethan had already left for work. Emma was away at college. The house felt unusually quiet. I remember thinking, maybe I'll finally organize the garage today. It's funny how life gives you ordinary thoughts, right before it changes forever. Just as I picked up my coffee, my phone rang. First National Bank. I almost ignored it. Banks usually called to sell something, or remind you about things you already knew. I answered anyway. "Good morning, Mrs. Bennett." The woman's voice sounded polite, professional. But there was something else. Almost hesitation. "This is Olivia. Mrs. Bennett, I'm calling regarding a series of recurring transfers from your joint checking account." I frowned. "Recurring transfers?" "Yes, ma'am." I pulled out a chair, sat down. "What kind of transfers?" There was a brief silence. Then she said the sentence that started destroying everything. $900 transferred every month to the same recipient for the last 18 years. I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it made absolutely no sense. "I'm sorry. I think you have the wrong account. I'm looking directly at your account history, Mrs. Bennett." My smile disappeared. "900? Yes. Every month? Yes. For 18 years? Yes." I stared at the family photo hanging across the kitchen. It had been taken during our 20th anniversary trip. Ethan's arm around my shoulders, Emma standing between us. 3 smiling faces, 1 perfect family. Or so I thought. Because in that moment, a question entered my mind that refused to leave. If $900 had been leaving our account every month for 18 years, who had been receiving it? I couldn't stop staring at that family photo. 22 years, 22 birthdays, 22 anniversaries, 22 Christmas mornings. Had I really missed something that big? Or had Ethan hidden it that well? The woman from the bank cleared her throat. "Mrs. Bennett, are you still there?" I blinked. "Yes, I'm here. I'm sorry, but because the account is jointly owned, we wanted to verify that these transfers were authorized." Jointly owned. The words hit me harder than I expected. Our account, not his. Ours. Money I had helped earn. Money we had budgeted together. Money we argued over whenever unexpected bills showed up. I swallowed. "I've never heard about these payments." The woman went quiet, almost as if she'd realized she'd just told me something. I wasn't supposed to discover this way. "I'm very sorry, Mrs. Bennett. If you have any questions, your local branch may be able to assist you." The call ended. For several minutes, I just sat there. The coffee beside me had gone cold. The rain outside kept falling. Everything looked exactly the same. But nothing felt the same anymore. I picked up my phone. 3 times. I almost called Ethan. 3 times. I put it back down. If there was an explanation, I wanted to hear it. But if there wasn't, I wasn't ready to hear that either. Around noon, my younger sister, Claire, called. She could always tell when something was wrong. "You sound tired. I didn't sleep well." "What's going on?" I almost lied. Instead, I told her about the bank call. She didn't interrupt. She listened quietly until I finished. Then she asked one question. "Have you asked Ethan?" "No." "Why not?" "Because if I'm wrong, I'll destroy 22 years of trust. And if you're right?" I didn't answer, because I didn't know. Claire sighed. "Liv, secrets don't disappear because we ignore them. They grow." Before hanging up, she said something that stayed with me. "Whatever you do, don't accuse him until you know the truth." At the time, that sounded like good advice. Looking back, I wish I had listened even more carefully. That evening, I heard Ethan's truck pull into the driveway. Just like every weekday, 5:42 p.m., always on time. He walked through the front door carrying groceries. His smile appeared the moment he saw me. "Guess what? I found your favorite coffee on sale." He held up the bag proudly. Normally, I would have smiled. Instead, I found myself staring at his hands. The same hands that had held mine at our wedding. The same hands that had built Emma's treehouse. The same hands that might have been signing checks to someone else for 18 years. He walked over, kissed my forehead, and headed toward the kitchen. "Everything okay?" I forced a smile. "Yeah, you seem quiet. Just tired." He nodded. "Long day? You could say that." For a second, I thought he was going to ask more questions. Instead, he simply smiled. "I'll make dinner tonight." I watched him walk away. And for the first time, his kindness didn't comfort me. It confused me. Because guilty people weren't supposed to look this normal. Were they? That night, while Ethan grilled steaks on the back patio, his phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. Just once. The screen lit up. I wasn't trying to spy. At least, that's what I told myself. But then I saw the notification. "L. Thank you. She was so happy to see you today." My heart stopped. She. Not they. Not everyone. She. I looked toward the backyard. Ethan was laughing as he flipped the steaks. Completely unaware. I looked back at the phone. The message disappeared. Face ID locked the screen. But it was already too late. I'd seen enough. Enough to know. The bank call wasn't just a mistake anymore. Someone named L had thanked my husband because another young woman had been happy to see him. I slowly placed the phone back exactly where it had been. Then I looked out the kitchen window. Ethan turned toward the house, smiled at me, and waved. I waved back. But deep inside, a terrifying thought had already taken root. Who was she? And why had seeing my husband made her so happy? The next morning, I woke up with a headache. For a few seconds, I convinced myself it had all been a dream. The bank, the payments, the text message, L. Then I looked at Ethan's side of the bed. Empty. The smell of fresh coffee drifted upstairs. He was already awake, just like every morning, making breakfast, like nothing had happened. When I walked downstairs, he smiled. Morning, sleepyhead. He slid a plate of pancakes in front of me. "Blueberries, your favorite." I looked at him. Really looked at him. His eyes, his smile, the tiny wrinkle near his left eyebrow. How could the same man, who remembered exactly how I liked my pancakes, hide something this enormous? "Ethan, yeah? What would you do if I kept a huge secret from you?" He laughed. "I'd probably assume it was another birthday surprise." "I'm serious." His smile faded slightly. "I don't know. I guess I'd want you to trust me enough to tell me." Trust. The word felt almost cruel, because that was exactly what I thought we had. He kissed my forehead, grabbed his truck keys. "I'll see you tonight. Love you." "I love you too." The words left my mouth automatically, but they no longer sounded like certainty. They sounded like habit. The moment his truck disappeared around the corner, I grabbed my purse, my car keys, and followed him. I had never followed my husband before, never imagined I would. It felt wrong, embarrassing, almost pathetic. But not knowing hurt even more. Traffic was heavier than usual. I stayed 3 or 4 cars behind him, far enough that he wouldn't recognize my car, close enough that I wouldn't lose him. Every traffic light made my heart race. Every turn made me wonder, where are you really going? Normally, Ethan drove straight downtown. His engineering office was on 5th Avenue, the same route, every weekday, for years. Today, he didn't. Instead, he took exit 14. I frowned. That wasn't the way to his office. 10 minutes later, he pulled into a small parking lot, a community college, not a construction site, not an office building, a college. He parked, but didn't get out. Instead, he simply waited, looking toward the main entrance, as if he was expecting someone. I parked across the street, hidden behind a row of trees. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. 5 minutes passed. Nothing happened. Then, the front doors opened. Students poured outside, laughing, talking, checking their phones. And then, I saw her. She couldn't have been older than 18, maybe 19. Long, dark hair, a faded denim jacket, a blue backpack hanging over one shoulder. She looked around, searching, until her eyes landed on Ethan's truck. Her entire face lit up. She smiled, not politely, not nervously. The kind of smile you only give someone who means the world to you. She ran, actually ran, toward his truck. Ethan stepped out, and before I could even process what I was seeing, she wrapped her arms around him. He hugged her back, tightly, like he'd missed her. Like this wasn't their first meeting, not even close. I couldn't breathe. Every terrible possibility rushed through my mind at once. His daughter, his affair, another family, another life. The hug lasted only a few seconds, but for me, it felt like forever. When they pulled apart, she laughed at something he said. Then, without thinking, she reached up and straightened his crooked tie. My chest tightened. Emma used to do that. Every first day of school, every graduation, every family wedding. It wasn't something strangers did. It wasn't something casual friends did. It was familiar, loving, natural. I reached for my phone, almost instinctively, then stopped. I couldn't do it. I couldn't become the woman secretly taking pictures of her own husband, so I simply watched, trying to understand what I was looking at. Ethan opened the passenger door for her. She climbed in. They drove away together. I waited 2 seconds, then started my engine, and followed them, completely unaware that before this day was over, I would discover something that would make the child support payments seem almost insignificant. I stayed 3 cars behind Ethan, close enough to keep his truck in sight, far enough that he wouldn't recognize my car. The young woman sat in the passenger seat, laughing at something he'd said. Even from that distance, I could see how comfortable she was around him. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't formal. She looked like she belonged beside him. Every mile felt heavier. Every traffic light gave me another chance to turn around. I never did. 20 minutes later, Ethan pulled into a quiet neighborhood I'd never seen before. Small brick houses, old maple trees, children riding bicycles. Nothing looked unusual, until he stopped in front of a tiny white house. The young woman got out first. She grabbed 2 grocery bags from the back seat. Ethan carried the rest. Then, before either of them reached the front door, she couldn't have been younger than 70. Silver hair, walking cane, kind smile. The moment she saw Ethan, her eyes filled with tears. She hugged him. Not like a neighbor, not like a friend, like family. I felt my stomach twist. Who were these people? The old woman touched Ethan's face, like she'd known him forever. Then she whispered something. I couldn't hear it, but I saw Ethan nod. A second later, the young woman slipped her arm around the elderly woman's shoulders. The 3 of them walked inside together. They looked like a family I had never known existed. I waited. 5 minutes, 10, 20. Finally, my curiosity defeated my fear. I crossed the street. The house was silent. The curtains were partly open. I wasn't trying to spy. I just wanted one answer. As I stepped closer, voices drifted through the slightly open kitchen window. The young woman laughed. Then I heard Ethan. I told you she'd love it. Another voice answered, the elderly woman. You've always kept your promises. Promises. That word again. Yesterday, the text message had said, "Thank you for keeping your promise." Now, I was hearing the exact same words. My heart began pounding. What promise? Who had he promised? And why had he never told me? Suddenly, my phone vibrated. I nearly screamed. It was Claire, my sister. I ignored the call. At that exact moment, the front door opened. I froze. Ethan stepped outside. I ducked behind a large oak tree. He looked around. For one terrifying second, I thought he'd seen me. Instead, he walked to his truck, opened the passenger door, and pulled out a thick brown envelope. Across the front, in black marker, were 4 handwritten words. Faye for college tuition. He carried it back inside. College tuition? I felt my knees weaken. The bank had said $900 every month for 18 years. The text message had mentioned college. Now, there was an envelope marked FOR college tuition. Everything seemed to point toward one conclusion, one I still refused to believe. An hour later, Ethan finally left. I stayed hidden until his truck disappeared. Then, without giving myself time to think, I walked to the front door. My hand hovered over the bell. If I rang it, there would be no going back. If I walked away, I'd spend the rest of my life wondering. I pressed the doorbell. Footsteps approached. The door slowly opened. The young woman stood there. She smiled politely. "Hi, can I help you?" For a moment, I couldn't speak, because standing just a few feet away from me, I noticed something I had completely missed before. Her eyes. They weren't blue. They weren't green. They were the exact same rare gray color as my husband Ethan's. The same eyes our daughter Emma had inherited. The same eyes that ran in the Bennett family. She tilted her head. "Are you okay?" I forced a smile. "I'm sorry. I think I have the wrong address." She smiled again. "No problem." As she started closing the door, the elderly woman called from inside. "Lily, who's at the door, Lily?" So, L wasn't just a letter. It was her name. And before the door closed completely, the elderly woman looked straight at me. Her face turned completely pale. She whispered, "Oh, my God." Then she said something that made every hair on my body stand up. "Olivia?" The old woman's face turned completely white. She stared at me, as though she'd seen a ghost. "Olivia?" My heart skipped. "You know my name?" For a second, no one spoke. The young woman, Lily, looked from me to the elderly woman, completely confused. "Grandma? Who is she?" "Grandma!" So this wasn't Lily's mother. The elderly woman forced a smile, but her hands were shaking. I thought she was someone else." She quickly looked at me again. "I'm sorry. You must have the wrong address." Then, before I could ask another question, she gently closed the door. Not slammed. Not angrily. Just carefully, like she was trying to keep something inside, or keep me out. I stood on the porch, unable to move. She knew my name. Not Mrs. Bennett. Not ma'am. Olivia. How? I'd never seen that woman before. At least, I didn't think I had. My phone buzzed again. Claire. This time, I answered. "Liv, you sound strange. I think I just met someone who knows me." "What do you mean?" I glanced back at the house. "I don't know," but she acted like she'd seen a ghost. Claire went quiet. Then she asked, "The girl? Did she look like Ethan?" I closed my eyes. "Yes." Claire didn't answer immediately. Finally, she whispered, "I think you need to prepare yourself." Those words stayed with me all the way home. That night, I barely touched my dinner. Ethan noticed. "You okay?" "I'm just tired. You've said that a lot lately." He smiled, trying to make me laugh. Normally, it would have worked. Tonight, I just watched him, studied him, trying to find some sign of guilt. Instead, I found something I'd never noticed before. Exhaustion. Not the kind that comes from work. The kind people carry when they've been protecting a secret for far too long. After dinner, he stepped outside to take a phone call. He almost never did that. I quietly walked toward the kitchen window. His back was facing me. His voice was low. "I know. I saw her today." A pause. "No, she doesn't know yet." Another pause. "I'll tell her. I just need a little more time." My heart dropped. There it was. Proof. He wasn't imagining things. He knew exactly who I was talking about. He knew I'd been there. But what shattered me wasn't the conversation. It was what he said next. I promised I'd protect both of them. Both of them? Who was the second person? Lily? And who else? When he came back inside, I pretended to be reading. He smiled. Everything all right? I looked into the eyes of the man I'd loved for 22 years, and for the first time, I asked myself a question I never thought I'd have to ask. Who are you? The next morning, I made a decision. I wasn't going to follow Ethan anymore. I wasn't going to search his phone. I wasn't going to guess. I wanted facts. Real facts. If 18 years of payments existed, there had to be paperwork. Records. Someone had to know where the money had gone. Someone who wasn't Ethan. I drove straight to our bank. The branch manager greeted me politely. After confirming my identity, he disappeared into the back office. A few minutes later, he returned carrying a thick folder. He placed it on the desk between us. Mrs. Bennett. These are the recurring transfers. I looked down. Page after page. Month after month. Year after year. Every payment. $900. Always on the same date. Always to the same legal trust account. Not a person. A trust. I frowned. A trust? Yes. It's managed by a law firm. Not a woman. Not a secret bank account. A law firm. Everything I believed shifted again. If Ethan had been hiding an affair, why would the money go to attorneys? The manager turned another page. There is one more document attached. It's unusual, he hesitated. I'm not sure why it was included. He slid the paper toward me. I looked down. At the top was a case number. Underneath it, one sentence. Benet Family Confidential Agreement. My last name. My family. My signature wasn't anywhere on it, but Ethan's was, signed, 18 years ago. Exactly 1 month before the first payment was ever made. My hands began to shake. Because suddenly, this wasn't just a secret. It was a legal agreement. 1. My husband had signed. Without ever telling me. I stared at Ethan's signature. The ink had faded with time. But there was no mistake. It was his handwriting, his signature, his decision, made 18 years ago, without me. The branch manager quietly slid another document toward me. I'm afraid that's all we're authorized to provide. I looked up. Who created this trust? I'm sorry. It's sealed. Only the law firm can answer that. Sealed. Everything about this felt sealed. Locked. Protected. Like someone had spent nearly 2 decades making sure I would never find out. I left the bank, holding only one useful clue. The name of the law firm. Harrison and Cole Family Attorneys. I'd never heard of them, which made one thing even stranger. Ethan had. The office was 40 minutes away. A quiet brick building downtown. Nothing flashy. No giant signs. Just a small brass plaque beside the entrance. Family law. Estate planning. Guardianships. Guardianships? That word made me pause. Why would child support involve guardianship? The receptionist smiled politely. Do you have an appointment? No. My name is Olivia Bennett. I need to speak with someone regarding a confidential trust. The smile disappeared. Bennett? She looked at her computer, then at me, then back at the screen. A strange silence filled the room. Finally, she picked up the phone. Mr. Harrison, she's here. She didn't ask who I was. She didn't ask why I'd come. She simply said, she's here, as if someone had been expecting this day. 5 minutes later, a man in his 60s stepped into the lobby. Gray suit, gray hair, calm eyes. He extended his hand. Mrs. Bennett, I'm Richard Harrison. I've been wondering, when we'd finally meet, a chill ran through my body. What do you mean? Finally, he sighed. Please, my office. His office overlooked the city. Books lined every wall. Family photographs sat on the shelves. He closed the door quietly, then looked at me with something that almost resembled pity. I assume you've learned about the payments. Yes, I want answers. He nodded slowly. I expected that. I've waited 18 years for this conversation. My heart pounded. 18 years? You knew me? I know your husband. I know Lily. I knew Margaret, the elderly woman? Yes, and I knew someone else. Someone else? Who? Richard looked down at his desk. For several seconds, he said nothing. Then, he looked back into my eyes. The one person who never wanted you to suffer. I frowned. I don't understand. You will. But first, I need to ask you one question. He folded his hands together. Mrs. Bennett. Before all of this, did your husband ever tell you about the accident? The accident? What accident? His face fell. For the first time, he genuinely looked surprised. He never told you. No. Richard leaned back in his chair, closed his eyes, then quietly whispered to himself, "Oh, Ethan, what have you done?" My breathing became uneven. What accident? Richard stood, walked to a locked cabinet, removed a thick file, placed it gently on the desk. Across the front, written in black letters, were 2 words, Beanut Case. He rested his hand on the folder. "I've kept this closed for 18 years because your husband begged me to. He believed the truth would destroy your family," I swallowed. "So, open it." Richard looked at me. "I can't. Not yet." My heart sank. "What? There is one document that legally belongs to you. But before I can release it, I need Ethan to be present." I stood up so quickly, my chair nearly tipped over. "No, I'm done waiting. I'm done being protected. I'm done being lied to." Richard's voice remained calm. "I understand. But if I break the agreement, everything Ethan sacrificed will have been for nothing." Sacrificed? That wasn't the word I'd expected. Lied. Cheated. Betrayed. Those were the words I expected. Not sacrificed. As I turned to leave, Richard spoke one final sentence. One sentence that completely changed the direction of my thoughts. "Mrs. Bennett, I know right now, you believe your husband betrayed you." He paused. "I only hope, when you learn why he made that promise, you'll still have time to forgive him." I froze, my hand still resting on the doorknob. Forgive him? For what? What kind of secret required forgiveness instead of anger? I slowly turned back. Richard's eyes filled with sadness, but he refused to say another word. I walked out of the office with more questions than answers. And for the first time, I wondered if I'd been asking the wrong question all along. Because maybe this story was never about another woman. Maybe it was about something much worse. I drove home, without turning on the radio, without answering my phone, without even realizing I'd missed my own street twice. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly, my knuckles had turned white. Richard's words echoed over and over inside my head. The accident. The sacrifice. I hope you still have time to forgive him. Forgive him? For what? If Ethan had cheated, there was nothing to forgive. If he'd lied for 18 years, there was nothing to forgive. Unless the lie wasn't meant to protect himself. No. I shook my head. I wasn't going to make excuses for him. Not yet. When I pulled into the driveway, Ethan's truck was already there. He was sitting alone on the front porch. He wasn't reading. He wasn't looking at his phone. He was just waiting, almost as if he knew exactly where I'd been. He looked up as I stepped out of the car. "We need to talk." His voice was calm. Too calm. I crossed my arms. Finally. We sat across from each other, at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd celebrated birthdays, helped Emma with homework, planned vacations. Tonight, it felt like a courtroom. Neither of us spoke for almost a minute. Finally, I broke the silence. "Who's Lily?" Ethan closed his eyes. Not surprised, not angry, just tired. I knew this day would come. "Answer me." He looked at me. "I will, but you have to let me finish." I laughed bitterly. "You've had 18 years to finish." He nodded slowly. "You're right." Another long silence. Then, he said something I never expected. "I met Lily the day she was born. Every muscle in my body tightened. I knew it." I whispered, "She's your daughter." He immediately shook his head. "No, I swear to you, she isn't." I stared at him. Then why did she have his eyes? Why did she hug him like family? Why had he paid for her entire life? Nothing made sense. I've never had an affair. I've never loved another woman. I've never betrayed you that way. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him. But wanting something doesn't make it true. So explain the payments. I can't. My voice rose. You can't? I won't. That single word ignited every ounce of anger I'd been holding inside. You won't? I've spent 22 years building a life with you. I deserve the truth. I know. Then tell me. I can't. I stood so quickly, my chair crashed onto the floor. Was any of it real? Our marriage? Our family? Our life? He stood too, Every word that came out of his mouth sounded broken. It was all real. Every second. I love you. I've always loved you. And that's exactly why I kept my promise. Promise. Again. Always. That promise. I was beginning to hate that word. Before I could answer, someone knocked on the front door. 3 slow knocks. Ethan's face changed instantly. Fear. Real fear. He looked at the clock. No, he whispered. Not today. I frowned. What are you talking about? Another knock. Louder this time. I walked toward the door. Ethan stepped in front of me. Olivia, please, don't move. My voice was ice cold. He didn't. For the first time in 22 years, my husband physically blocked my path. Not aggressively. Not violently. Desperately. Please. You don't understand. I understand enough. I gently pushed past him, opened the front door. Standing there was Lily. She looked terrified. Her eyes were red from crying. She wasn't alone. The elderly woman, Margaret, stood beside her, barely able to stand. Lily looked directly at Ethan. Then she said something that made the color disappear from his face. He's awake. Silence. Complete silence. Ethan closed his eyes, almost as if he'd been dreading those 2 words for 18 years. I looked from Lily to Ethan. What does that mean? No one answered. Margaret began to cry. Lily's voice trembled. He remembers everything. My heart began racing. Who was awake? And what? Did he remember? No one moved. No one spoke. The only sound in the room was the ticking of the old clock hanging above our fireplace. Lily stood frozen at the front door. Tears streamed down her face. Margaret held onto her cane, trying not to collapse. Ethan looked as though every drop of blood had drained from his body. Then, he whispered a name. Daniel. I frowned. Who is Daniel? No one answered. Instead, Ethan walked past me, grabbed his truck keys, and headed for the door. I caught his arm. No, you don't get to leave. Not this time. He slowly turned toward me. His eyes were full of something I'd never seen before. Not guilt, not shame. Fear. Real fear. Olivia, if I don't go now, everything will fall apart. I stared at him. It already has. Lily stepped forward. Her voice trembled. Please, let him come. I looked at her. The girl I'd convinced myself was the reason my marriage had fallen apart. She wasn't angry. She wasn't defensive. She looked heartbroken. Almost as if she felt guilty for something she hadn't done. I asked the question that had haunted me for weeks. Who are you? She opened her mouth, closed it again, then quietly answered. My name is Lily Carter. I'm 19 years old. And I've spent my whole life wishing I could meet the woman standing in front of me. Every hair on my arm stood up. What? I know who you are. I've always known. But you've never known me. Margaret wiped her tears. Ethan, she deserves the truth. He looked down at the floor. I know. No. Margaret shook her head. You've said that for 18 years. There isn't any time left. My heart raced. 18 years. Will someone please tell me what happened 18 years ago? Silence. Then, Lily reached into her backpack. She pulled out an old photograph. The edges were worn. The colors had faded. She held it carefully, like it was the most valuable thing she owned. This is where everything started. She handed it to me. It was a picture of 3 people. A young Ethan. A young woman I'd never seen before. And a little boy, maybe 5 years old. The boy was smiling, holding Ethan's hand. Across the bottom, someone had written a date. August 14th, 18 years ago. I looked up. Who's the little boy? Lily whispered. My brother. Brother? You have a brother? She nodded. My brother, Daniel, the same name Ethan had whispered. I turned toward him. You knew him? Ethan's voice cracked. I loved him. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Nothing made sense anymore. Who was the woman? Margaret answered this time. My daughter. My only daughter. Lily's mother. I looked back at the photograph. So, Ethan knew your daughter? Margaret nodded. Yes. They grew up together. They were best friends. Best friends? Ethan had never mentioned another family. Not once. Not in 22 years. Lily slowly sat down. There was a car accident. My heartbeat stopped. Richard, the lawyer. He'd mentioned an accident. This was it. 19 years ago. My mom, my little brother Daniel, and Ethan We're all in the same car. I looked toward Ethan. His eyes filled with tears. He still hadn't spoken. Lily continued. My mom died. I covered my mouth. My brother survived, but he never woke up. Silence filled the room. He fell into a coma. I looked back at Ethan. And you? His voice barely came out. I survived. No one spoke for several seconds. Finally, I whispered, so you've been paying child support for your best friend's children? Lily slowly shook her head. No, it wasn't child support. I frowned. The bank called it child support. She looked at Ethan, then back at me. It was never child support. It was something else. My stomach tightened. Then what was it? Lily took a deep breath. The court called it child support. My mother called it forgiveness. But Ethan, he called it a promise. Just then, Ethan finally looked at me. Tears streamed down his face. For 18 years, I've prayed. You would never have to hear the rest. I whispered. The rest of what? He closed his eyes, then quietly said, because the accident was my fault. The room fell silent. No one moved. No one even seemed to breathe. I looked at Ethan, the man I'd loved for 22 years, the man I'd accused of living a double life, the man who now stood in front of me, completely broken. It was my fault. Those words echoed through the room. I wanted to hate him. I wanted to scream. But instead, I asked the only question that mattered. What happened? Ethan looked toward Lily, then Margaret. Finally, at me. It was raining. The roads were slippery. We'd just finished Daniel's 5th birthday. Lily quietly wiped away another tear. I was only a baby. I don't remember any of it. Ethan nodded. You weren't even 1-year-old. He swallowed hard. We stopped at an intersection. The traffic light turned green. I looked both ways. I started driving. Then he stopped speaking. His hands began shaking. I never saw the truck. What truck? I whispered. The police report said the driver was drunk. He ran the red light. He hit us at almost 70 miles an hour. Margaret closed her eyes. My daughter died instantly. I covered my mouth. Daniel survived, but never woke up. The room felt colder, much colder. So I looked at Ethan. It wasn't your fault. He didn't answer. Margaret did. No, it wasn't. I frowned. Then why? Why have you spent 18 years paying for something you didn't do? Margaret slowly looked toward Ethan. Because he blamed himself anyway. Ethan sat down. I was driving. I should have protected them. You couldn't. I should have. You couldn't. I should have. His voice broke completely. I promised Sarah. Before she died, I promised. I'd never abandon her children. Sarah. The young woman in the photograph. Lily's mother. I looked toward Lily. So, the money. Lily nodded. My grandmother refused to accept charity, so Ethan created a legal trust. He wanted us to have food, a home, school, college. But Grandma said, if she accepted free money, she'd feel like a burden. So the lawyers turned it into court-ordered support. My eyebrows furrowed. Why? Richard Harrison's words suddenly made sense. The trust, the agreement, the sealed documents. Lily answered quietly. So no one could ever challenge it. It guaranteed the money would always reach us. I looked back at Ethan. You could have told me I wanted to, so many times. Then why didn't you? He didn't answer. Margaret did. Because of me. I turned. What? I made him promise. What promise? Margaret looked directly into my eyes. I told him, if Olivia ever found out, she would spend the rest of her life living with my tragedy. I couldn't let another woman carry my grief, so I made Ethan swear. He would protect you. My heart stopped. She was trying to protect me? For 18 years, Ethan had carried someone else's family, someone else's grief, someone else's promise, completely alone. And every month, when $900 quietly left our account, I thought we were just bad at saving money. I had no idea. My husband was keeping an impossible promise alive. Just then, the front door opened again. Everyone turned. Richard Harrison stepped inside, holding the same brown folder I'd seen in his office. He looked at Ethan, then at me. Quietly, he placed the folder on the kitchen table. I think it's finally time. He slowly opened it. Inside was one final letter. The envelope was yellow with age. Across the front, Written in elegant handwriting, were 5 words: for Olivia, if she ever knows. Every person in the room began crying, including Ethan, because they all knew who had written it: Sarah, the woman who died 18 years ago. And somehow, she had left a letter for me.